Welcome back to the Coles RX Helpcast, your trusted source for the latest news, trends, and insights into the ever-evolving world of healthcare. I'm Max Cole, and I'm glad you've joined us for our second episode. Today, we're diving into an issue that has so many people feeling fed up with the healthcare system, an issue that recently made headlines in the most tragic way. If you follow the news, you may have heard about the horrific killing of the United Healthcare CEO. While the actions of that individual are unspeakably wrong and inexcusable, it reflects just how deeply frustrated people have become with an opaque and broken healthcare system. Here's the thing. United Healthcare and its pharmacy benefit manager, OptumRx, sit at the heart of this system. PBMs like OptumRx are middlemen that control nearly everything related to your medications, from what drugs are covered to how much they cost, to which pharmacies you're allowed to use. They profit from keeping the system confusing and difficult to navigate. But confusion shouldn't be the norm. That's why we're here. In today's episode, we're pulling back the curtain on PBMs to help you understand how they operate, how they affect both patients and pharmacies, and what reforms are being proposed to hold them accountable. We'll also share how Coles RX and Coles Insurance advisors are helping people navigate the system to get the care and medications they need. This is a topic that impacts us all, and there's a lot to unpack, so let's dive in. What are PBMs and how do they work? To start, let's break down what a pharmacy benefit manager is. PBMs were originally created to act as intermediaries between insurance companies, drug manufacturers, and pharmacies. Their job was to negotiate drug prices, process insurance claims, and determine which medications would be covered under insurance plans. Sounds reasonable, right? But over time, PBMs have morphed into one of the most powerful entities in the healthcare system. Today, the top three PBMs, CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and Optum Rx, control around 80% of the prescription drug market in the United States. These companies are not just middlemen, they are vertically integrated giants that also own insurance companies and mail-order pharmacies, creating a significant conflict of interest. Here's how they operate. Number one, formularies. PBMs create lists of drugs that are covered by insurance known as formularies. To get their drugs on these formularies, pharmaceutical companies pay PBMs rebates. On average, a drug priced at $1,000 might include a $400 rebate that goes straight to the PBM. This incentivizes manufacturers to inflate drug prices to cover the cost of these rebates. Number two, reimbursement rates. PBMs also determine how much pharmacies are reimbursed for filling prescriptions. Independent pharmacies often receive reimbursement rates that are below the cost of the medication itself, forcing them to either operate at a loss or refuse to fill the prescription altogether. Number three, mail order pharmacies. PBMs often require or incentivize patients to use their own mail order pharmacies, which further consolidates their control and profits. To put it simply, PBMs hold the keys to the kingdom. They decide which drugs are accessible, how much they cost, and who gets paid. The impact of PBMs on patients and pharmacies. Let's talk about how this system impacts you as a patient and why it's driving so many independent pharmacies out of business. For patients, the most obvious issue is cost. The United States spends at least 40% more on prescription drugs than any other country. Why? Because PBM's rebate system drives up the list prices of medications. Even worse, these inflated costs don't necessarily translate into better access. Patients often find themselves unable to afford the medications they need or stuck navigating a maze of insurance requirements. Take this example. Imagine your doctor prescribes you a name brand medication like Ozempic. When you go to your local pharmacy, you're told the medication is out of stock. But is it really? Often pharmacies can't afford to fill the prescription because the PBM's reimbursement rate is lower than the pharmacy's cost for the drug. Meanwhile, The PBM-owned mail-order pharmacy might have the medication available, but it's all part of a system that forces you into their network. For pharmacies, the situation is equally grim. Independent pharmacies across the country are shutting their doors because they can't sustain the financial losses imposed by PBMs. For example, Lehan Drugs in Illinois recently had to stop providing pharmacy services at one of its locations because 40% of its prescriptions were reimbursed at below cost. And Lehan isn't alone. This is happening nationwide. PBM reform, what's happening in Congress? So what's being done about this? The good news is that PBM reform is gaining traction in Congress. Several bills aimed at curbing the abusive practices of PBMs have been introduced, and there's bipartisan support for change. Here's what these reform efforts aim to accomplish. Number one, transparency. PBMs would be required to disclose their rebate practices, allowing lawmakers and the public to understand how these middlemen operate. Number two, fair reimbursement. Reform would ensure that pharmacies are reimbursed at rates that cover their costs, preventing them from operating at a loss. Number three, consumer protections. PBMs would be prohibited from using gag clauses that prevent pharmacies from telling patients about cheaper medication options. One particularly noteworthy reform is the Federal Trade Commission's lawsuit against CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx for anti-competitive practices that have inflated the cost of insulin. This case has brought national attention to the broader issues with PBMs, and it's a step in the right direction. Why PBM reform matters for you? Now you might be wondering, what does this all mean for me? Here's why PBM reform is so important. Lower drug costs. By eliminating unnecessary rebates and increasing transparency, reform could bring down the overall cost of prescription drugs. Improved access. With fair reimbursement rates, more pharmacies could stay open, giving patients greater access to medications and personalized care. Fairness in the system. Reform would level the playing field for independent pharmacies, ensuring that PBMs can't exploit their position for financial gain. At the end of the day, PBM reform isn't just about pharmacies. It's about creating a healthcare system that works for patients. How Kohl's is making a difference. This brings us to why Kohl's RX is so passionate about this issue. As a pharmacy that has served our community for decades, we've seen firsthand how PBMs create confusion, inflate costs, and limit access to care. That's why we decided to take action. One way we're helping is through Kohl's Insurance Advisors. We started this division because we saw how difficult it was for patients to navigate the Medicare system, which is deeply intertwined with PBMs. Many patients don't realize that when they choose a Medicare plan, they're also choosing a PBM. And that choice can have a huge impact on their out-of-pocket costs and access to care. At Kohl's Insurance Advisors, we work with patients to understand their Medicare options, including when they can enroll outside of open enrollment, identify plans that cover the medications and services they need, avoid plans with restrictive networks that could limit their access to care. Our goal is to simplify this process and empower patients to make informed decisions. We believe that everyone deserves access to affordable, high-quality healthcare, and we're committed to making that a reality. What can you do? So what can you do to support PBM reform and ensure fair access to medications? Here are a few steps. Stay informed. Educate yourself about how PBMs operate and the impact they have on healthcare costs and access. Advocate for change. Contact your legislators and urge them to support PBM reform bills. Every voice matters. Choose your insurance plan wisely. Work with a trusted advisor, like Kohl's Insurance Advisors, to select a plan that meets your needs and avoids the pitfalls of PBM-controlled networks. Together, we can push for a fairer, more transparent healthcare system that puts patients first. Thank you for tuning in to this in-depth episode of the Kohl's RX Healthcast. We hope this discussion has shed light on the critical issue of PBMs and why reform is so urgently needed. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with your friends, family, and colleagues. Let's work together to make healthcare more accessible and affordable for everyone. Join us next time as we explore another important topic in healthcare. Until then, take care and stay informed.